There's a difference between long-term and short-term capital gain versus income. And if you're in the business of fixing and flipping, even if you still have a W-2 job, you're still in a business of fixing and flipping. You are not an investor. And so that comes to you as income. And that is taxed very differently than, capital gains.
Financial independence,
freedom,
financial picture,
independent financially,
financial future,
financial freedom and wealth,
financial independence.
Get your fill, financial independence and long life. Hey, welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life. And sometimes we're lucky enough to have already successful and very interesting people on with us to help. And that's the case today. We have Lauri Kibby with us. She is a woman who's dedicated to inspiring other women to recognize their power, to realize all their dreams. And she approaches this from many directions, including financial education, defining values, and how to use the two to realize your full potential. Lauri, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I love the way you describe what I do.
And actually, that's kind of inspired by you. So
thank you.
We can have a mutual admiration society. I think that's what we'll be doing today, because
that is one of us, what we need to do for other women, to let them know that they're up to the task of creating their own wealth.
That's absolutely true. Before we got started, we were talking, we were having sort of a private conversation that the listeners weren't a part of, talking about doing fix and flips. And as much as I can understand the fun and the creativity involved in like taking something yucky and turning it into something nice, there are some nuances about fix and flips that people don't necessarily always know about. And even though I know this isn't your, number one, raison d'etre at the moment, I appreciate that you are willing to talk to us about that. So, how about just sort of some things that you think might be misconceptions people, might not be as familiar with?
Absolutely. Well, I first want to say I so appreciate, because I speak to a lot of women who the fix and flip concept allows them to have their bring forward their creativity and to create beauty. And I understand that. But I think fundamentally what many women that I've spoken with think they're doing is that they're actually investing. And I like to make the distinction that fix and flips is really a job. You're busy working and you're creating hopefully more money from it with a huge amount of risk, by the way. Fix and flips are not riskless versus being an investor where you're investing your money in somebody else who is actually doing the work of the real estate, and your money is working for you rather than you working for your money. And I like to make that distinction because I'm not clear that people see the difference, or that women see the difference. And they think they only have access to the fix and flips to get into real estate, when in fact, there are avenues, such as what we do at Selene Brighthouse, to access real estate without having to actually do the work of it.
Right, without your tool belt.
Exactly. Or the stress of it,
or the
management of it, or all of the other things that come with doing fix and flips.
And so this is going to be like, especially for the beginning, this is going to be the ugly part of doing a fix and flip, like that you found something you didn't expect to find. And so now that profit you thought you were going to make is non-existent.
Absolutely. And, having the connections to be able to understanding pricing, understanding construction, understanding permitting, even if you've done it multiple times and you may be fluent at that, real estate does have cycles. Do you understand those cycles? Do you know where you are in them?
Yeah.
Are you buying at the right time in that cycle? Are you going to be hit by an unexpected, especially in these times, an unexpected economic reversal? So fix and flips, I don't think, provide the length of time that a good real estate investment can provide, because time is a very important part of real estate investing and realizing your returns. So when you have all your money tied up in something that you must flip to realize the gain, that could be problematic, obviously.
Yeah. Well, and that's absolutely true. And because of the way the market has been in the past, there are people who've been doing fix and flips for years and have never had a downturn in the market. So they don't realize that, between the time that you put it under agreement to the time that you're ready to sell it, prices could actually be going down and working against you. So even though you're improving the property, the price isn't like before. Like I know people who they just, they did this. Now, while I've got it, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. And they did more and more stuff to it. And it ended up being okay because the market was kind of going along with them at the same time. So they benefited from the time, even if not from the repair they chose to do. But
Well, and I think that they're at a disadvantage. If you've only been successful in a period of time, that's a disadvantage in some ways to being a great investor, because those downturns and those losses actually are very valuable learning. I mean, I don't wish anybody lose money. I've lost a lot of money, made some very bad decisions recently, which has definitely led me on a path to be smarter. And I have a finance degree, so and I've been in real estate for a very long time, and we still make mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes. But it's more than just even the price of what you can sell at. It's the cost of construction. Things are changing, and that interest rate, the ability of a buyer to be able to borrow, all of those things fit into a matrix of understanding how you get the return that you're hoping. And you have to look at your return. So even if you make a little money, is that actually a good return? So there's that whole analysis as well.
yeah, if you're not, and it's a scary, horrible thing to look at, but once you factor in all of your expenses and all of your taxes and everything else, and then you take that gain and divide it by how many hours you spent in it, and you find out, geez, I could be working, I could be slinging hamburgers at McDonald's and make 4 times more money.
Well, and I don't think that people recognize, if you're doing fix and flips, that's actually income, from what I understand. I'm not an accountant, so this is not tax advice, but there's a difference between long-term and short-term capital gain versus income. And if you're in the business of fixing and flipping, even if you still have a W-2 job, you're still in a business of fixing and flipping. You are not an investor. And so that comes to you as income, and that is taxed very differently than capital gains. So something else, just another nuance in that whole formula of looking at, are you getting a decent return for the amount of effort and work and risk that you've taken?
Yeah, and I think people even forget about taxes altogether, right? They're just looking at, what did I buy it for? What did I sell it for? And they're forgetting about their hourly, the time that they put into it, and they're forgetting about taxes. And so that once you factor all that in, it can be a not very pleasant number.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
And well, I was just going to say, we're not saying never do a flip. We're just
oh, no, no,
trying,
no.
yeah.
No, I just think it's making the distinction. And if it's about creating wealth, where can you put your money if you're interested in real estate, which I believe every portfolio should have real estate? Where can you put it so that it works for you, such that you're growing your overall portfolio and your overall wealth? I run a fund that does strip center consolidation, value add, which has both cash flow opportunities and gain at the end. And it has very moderate risk for what we hope to be outsized returns in real estate. And I think that oftentimes in fix and flips, people see these big returns, they look at just the dollars, when in fact it's really not. And it's not really adding to, like, they have to do it again,
Right.
to keep it growing. Whereas you can be in a portfolio where someone else is doing a strategy that is growing your money and providing you cash flow potentially to invest elsewhere, so that you can continue to have a diversified portfolio.
Yeah. And the other thing about fix and flips, you said you have to do them again. And that reminded me that some people are under the misconception that you can do a 1031 exchange with a fix and flip. And that's not the case. In most of the time, that is not the case. That you have to hold the property for at least 2 years before you can do a 1031 exchange. So that's why every single time you're selling, you are supposed to be paying taxes on that gain.
Right, right. Well, and if you're doing a 1031 exchange, that means it's been a rental. And then you have all the issues of depreciation, et cetera. So
Yeah, recapturing all that.
you assume it's a rental if it's a home, so.
Yeah, well, if you held it that long, but
Yes.
people think, oh, this is a real estate investment. I can just turn around and do a 1031 exchange and buy another flip,
Right.
and that's not the case. So if you haven't done it yet, make sure you're bringing your accountant into the picture, so that at the end of the year, you're not like, hey, look, I did this, and can't we just call it that? And that's not the way 1031 exchanges work. That's not the way, right, your income is going to work.
Right. And that's at Selene Brighthouse, we also have educational programs that look at things like this, like how can you utilize a self-directed IRA to expand your ability to invest in things, real estate specifically.
Yep.
We also run programs or educational programs on looking at things like what is a 1031 exchange, or how do you evaluate the risk of a particular real estate investment?
Yep.
How do you do proper due diligence? Those kinds of things.
And that's exactly all the things that we need and might not, right? When you're getting started, you don't necessarily know what you don't know. So you're in that situation where you're like, well, you know, whatever, I'm just going to do it, right? I'm going to get out of analysis paralysis and I'm just going to jump in and do it. Well, you know, there's a middle ground there.
Yeah, there is. There's the education, being financially literate, understanding real estate, understanding all the components of it, I think is a very important first step. And you, of course, you learn while you do it as well, but there's some basics that everybody should understand. Back to our original conversation, or the early part of our conversation, understanding how to analyze your return, very important.
Absolutely.
What is internal rate of return? What does that mean about your investment? How do you calculate that accurately? All those kinds of things. That type of information is very important to being a smart investor, and especially one committed to building their wealth.
Absolutely true. Now, how did you get started being a financial educator and, you know, being interested in helping women to pursue this goal?
Well, you know, I considered myself a sophisticated investor. I've done real estate most of my life, and I unfortunately made a very bad investment, lost a tremendous amount of money. And from that, really became very, very committed to ensuring, looking at my own experience of what mistakes I made in that investment, and realized if I could do that, oh my gosh, somebody with much less experience and knowledge than I could make even worse mistakes. And we work very hard for our money, especially women work very hard for their money, and losing it. If I can in any way help people try not to lose it, I became very dedicated to that mission and started Selene Brighthouse, which manages, we have a fund that invests in real estate as well as providing this education, and we're focused on women. And it's really out of my own experience of having lost in what I thought was a really good investment, and wasn't. So.
And so this is everybody's fear, I think, right? That's why some people are sitting on the sidelines. They're not investing. They're just, you know, doing whatever. I'm just going to, you know, abdicate my financial health and well-being to some fund manager or something like that, right? And not taking the reins themselves. So if there were, would you say, I don't want to, you know, put words in your mouth, but as far as like, if you could say one thing that you think went wrong with that investment, as far as like what you could have done differently, you know?
Yeah. So let me say this, like all investment has risk, whether you're holding the reins or someone else is holding the reins.
Right.
The key to trying to minimize the risk of loss, which is all you can do, you cannot, even if you put your money in your mattress, you are losing money.
It's true.
Just true.
Yeah.
So what looks to be zero risk actually has risk in it. So it's about due diligence. It's one of the topics that we talk about. How do you do due diligence? And how do you use critical thinking along with your intuition to evaluate not only the investment, but the people you're investing with as a step one? And being very, very thorough and good at that, and understanding your own risk tolerances combined with that, I think is very important. You know, it's a two-way street. You want to make sure that the person you're investing with, or the group that you're investing with, if you choose to invest with someone, that they're actually evaluating you too, because you want them to be as discerning about who is their investor as you want to be as to whom you invest with, because you're going to have a long-term relationship, hopefully.
Right.
You want to know that that their values match your values. Very important in investing, I think. That they are committed to you being well informed. So there's a whole series of parameters, I think, in the due diligence phase that becomes important. And you should do the same when you're making your own investment. You just are responsible now for all the due diligence on the investment that you're going to make yourself.
Yeah.
There are some very, very good, I mean, there are good people out there and good investments out there. And unfortunately, we often hear about the horrible losses. And that keeps us a little bit more afraid. But I think doing the due diligence and becoming more sophisticated, understanding all of the nuances of investing become very important. So education is a really key element.
Absolutely. And when you do that, when you do abdicate your responsibility to other people, it just gives you someone to blame. It doesn't give you any kind of guarantee. You can just, right?
Absolutely.
Somebody to
Absolutely.
swear
And
about later.
yeah, and it's interesting, investing with somebody else, you should see as a partnership.
Yeah.
Not that you're turning it over to somebody, but you're partnering with somebody. I think that's a really, really important mindset,
Yeah.
because you'll ask all the questions you need to ask. And there's never a stupid question, in my opinion. That's one of the things we talk about with the women that we work with. Do not be afraid of any question. And if the other side doesn't like that question, it might be an indicator they're not the people to invest with.
Right, exactly. Maybe you hit on something interesting and you need to pursue that a little further.
Right,
Because I
exactly.
do feel, so talk about, in your opinion or experience, the role of research versus gut feeling versus trusting the person because you know them or whatever. Like this is, I think, something that people fall into.
Yes, well, I made that mistake because the investment I made was referred by a friend whom I trusted and by somebody who looked to be very successful. And I ignored my gut. So mistake one I made was I went to dinner with the individual. I didn't care for how he spoke about his family. It was totally an antithesis to my values about family. And I chose to ignore it because the return was so good. And my greed popped in and took hold. And I knew from my critical thinking that it was a ridiculous return and unbelievable. It was so good. And I still proceeded because I was afraid of missing out on such a great opportunity. And then I was enticed to make further investments because, as most Ponzi schemes, and it was a Ponzi scheme, the returns just get better and better, or you keep getting your return as promised, and it is that great return, and you're fooled into thinking this must be real. So if I hadn't ignored my gut feeling at the beginning and used my critical thinking with my gut feeling and allowed my values to drive my decision making, I wouldn't have made the decision. So I think all three play a role.
Yeah.
I think gut gives you an indicator that you should pay attention to, and then overlay that with your critical thinking and ask the questions from there. So I think they're both very, very important. I don't think one without the other can be by itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. But you brought up another good point, which was um, about the fear of missing out, which, as it turns out, when I'm working, I'm also a real estate broker. When I work with buyers, that's like the number one thing that drives a purchase is this fear of missing out. And when, that's the whole philosophy between having an open house and having lots of people come. And then you feel this sort of subtle pressure. Well, everybody wants this house and it must be great. And they get that FOMO. And that's where these bidding wars get kind of crazy. And it's a real thing that we need to be aware of, right?
Yes.
That this fear of loss is a real thing when it comes to buying stuff. And it can put us into a crappy
You need to
place.
let it pass over.
Exactly.
You know,
Go home.
on big decisions, give it 24 hours, give it 48 hours, let that subside. And then again, bring in your thinking, your analysis, your questions, very, very important. But unfortunately, FOMO is a very big thing, a very big thing.
Yeah.
And that fights with this fear. Oh my gosh, am I going to lose? And then, oh my gosh, am I going to miss out? And they go back and forth, back and forth. And
Right.
that's why I always say, come back to what's your experience, do your due diligence. Good due diligence means you have good information and you know what to ask. If you don't, research and find out what to ask.
Yeah.
And make it doesn't mean that you'll miss out. It might mean that you miss out on losing.
Exactly.
Which is,
And if,
and also the other thing is, if you are already in the world of investing and you have opportunities, there'll be millions of more or thousands of more opportunities. This is not your last opportunity. There'll be
right.
another one. knowing that can kind of take the immediacy out of it, I think, or understanding that.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that if someone's pressuring you to make a decision, right? I mean, what if right?
Right.
Why are
Well,
they
right,
begging you
that's
for
why
money?
that's
Yeah.
right.
I mean, if it's that great, the people should be knocking a path to their door, and they shouldn't need to try to hassle me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's some young funds out there, and some young groups who are working. I mean, we're a young group, we're a new fund. Um, but you don't want your fund to be desperate. You want, like I said, it's a two-way street. You want to make sure your fund is making sure that they have the right investors, who have the time, who understand the investment, uh, whom you can work with. So very important.
absolutely true. And I don't think we talk about that enough on here. I don't think we talk enough about making sure, being clear about what your values are going in and making sure that whatever it is that you're asked to invest in aligns with those values.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't even think I've never been an investor in a fund, and I've invested in funds where anybody has ever talked about what the values of that fund are. And for me, that's very important. I think you want to be aligned in values, because you do have a ride together,
Right.
and many funds you don't have a ride. You invest your money and you hear from them once a year. But I think being in a relationship and having more than that is important when you invest your money. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And like you say, then you're going to be sure that you're getting more out of it than just a return.
exactly,
You're
exactly.
getting your education, you're getting your alignment with values, you're getting a good feeling, hopefully, that, the good things are happening.
And hopefully you're building your legacy, and I don't think many women, obviously, as I said, I'm focused on women. Women need to start thinking about the legacy that they're going to leave. There's this huge wealth transfer. I think 30 plus trillion dollars going to be transferred to women over the next 6 or 7 years. It's the largest wealth transfer in the history of this country, probably in the world. And, women are going to be coming into windfalls and thinking about what legacy you want to leave and how you can build that legacy, how you can use those funds to really create the life that you want, is important. And being able to having the education and understanding investing, and being able to take a step back from the immediacy of coming into a large sum of money, whether it's 100,000 or 100 million, requires the balancing of critical thinking, and you're not missing out, because trust me, I've seen a lot of women who come into 100,000 and suddenly they have a lot of beautiful purses and shoes and a brand new car, and they haven't done anything in line with creating a legacy that they might want. So all of those things, I think, are important. And I think education builds the foundation for that, understanding what you can do with that money and how being thoughtful about it can actually create more of what it is you want out of all those other areas of life. So
Beautifully said.
thank you. Thank you.
So, Laurie, I can't believe our time is just like flying away. And I just want to make sure, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to bring up, or that you want to leave people with, a question I should have asked?
I think we actually covered what I find very important. So thank you. It was, I think, a great conversation. Um, I do want to, if women are interested in learning more, we do offer education. It's at selenebrighthouse.com, and Selene is Selene. But I think women are in an enviable position right now, given this great wealth transfer. And, I want to be part of making sure that they all win at what they want from that. So
Absolutely. Yes. Consider a passive income stream instead of just blowing it all in one great trip to the mall.
that's true. Local car dealership.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. And all the links and information of how to contact Laurie will be in the show notes, of course. And I want to just ask you now to write down the names of 5 people who you know who would benefit from all that Laurie has shared today. People who are thinking about doing flips, people who have some money that need to be invested, maybe some 401k money that's just sitting there not working for them. And forward this episode to them, because Laurie will thank you, and I will thank you, and the person you forward it to will definitely thank you. And thank you, Lauri.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show. I
Oh,
appreciate
it's my
the
pleasure.
conversation.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll see y'all next week. Bye.